as a kid, I had done a commercial for Kentucky Fried Chicken. And in the middle of watching The Wizard of Oz, my commercial came on. And I was probably 5 years old. And so I was like, we were screaming when my commercial had come on. Life is like a roller coaster, but it's better when we go through it together. Welcome to the Candace Cameron Bure Podcast. In this special series, we're talking about movies and the stories behind your favorite films. My guest co-host for this season is Andy Erwin. Andy has been around the music and film industry his whole life. As a teenager, he started being a cameraman for ESPN, and then he went on to direct award-winning music videos for people like Amy Grant, Michael W. Smith, Casting Crowns, Switchfoot, Skillet, some of my faves. He's now the Chief Creative Officer of Kingdom Story Company and is one of only 3 directors in America who has had 3 films receive an A+ cinema score. That is huge, you guys. Kingdom Story Company has garnered 6 A+ cinema scores, which is a testament to their connection with audiences through movies like I Can Only Imagine, October Baby, Jesus Revolution, American Underdog, and Ordinary Angels. Andy and I recently worked together on Unsung Hero with Joel Smallbone of For King and Country. Come join us. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Candace. I mean, you've been on my podcast, The Storytellers, and now I get to be on yours. So it's kind of full circle for me.
I know. I'm so happy you're here. I'm really excited for our mini season because we're going to be talking about the stories you love. And your whole podcast is about storytellers, and you are a master storyteller. I'll be the minor prophet storyteller. How's that?
You like, for me, like, forget all that. Like, the fact that if you told my 14-year-old self that I'd be co-hosting a show today with D.J. Tanner, like, I would probably slap myself back to 1992. But, it's exciting that, like, you've grown up in stories. So, like, your whole family has been on set your whole life. So I'm excited to tap into a little bit of your experience, as we talk about some stories that have affected us.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to hear. I know you have so much trivia too that you're going to be talking about. And then obviously you are an incredible director. And so gaining that type of insight will be so awesome for me. But what we're going to do this season is we're going to talk about the stories you love, some of your very favorite movies. Yep. We've picked 6 movies that I know most of you guys have seen all of them. Right. And we're going to kind of go in depth as to why it's such a great film, what the storytelling means behind it. And because here on my podcast, I dive deep into faith. I mean, we've talked about the Trinity. We talk about emotional health. We've talked about parenting and purpose, all from a faith perspective. So what we're going to do here with these movies is also see where can we tie in the faith. Some of these movies are actually faith-based movies, but some aren't. And yet I can still find themes of faith within them.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting thing about it is, Jesus taught in parables. And so it was the storytelling that was a launch pad for him to kind of go deeper and to really teach what he wanted to get across. And I think you look in the human soul, that storytelling element is a reflection of God's design in us, that it's how we relate. And we have these stories that really connect with us. So I think on a human soul level, it's always these people that are asking questions about, that God hole in their heart. And so you look at it and you see just reflections of a desire for redemption, or the understanding of like your set says, kindness. There's all these themes that I think as Christians we can pull out. We don't look for our theology in it, but we do look for the reflection of what our hearts really want. And so it's, you look at different films, whether it's, sci-fi movies like Signs or Interstellar, or even like The Matrix, you see these little glimpses of Christianity kind of reflected in it, or, a musical like Les Mis, they're all there. And so I'm excited to kind of just, we picked 6 films, and I'll let you kind of have the deciding vote on what we picked. And you picked 6 really good ones. And so we're going to dive into it. And I think for me, it's always really telling somebody's favorite film. It's like, you know, with my podcast, it's what we lead off with. Like, what was your first film that really captured you? And like, why that one? And for you, I've always heard it was Wizard of Oz.
It is.
So,
The Wizard of Oz is my favorite film.
Why?
I want to know. I'll tell you why. Okay, because I still want to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah.
But I would love. So before I answer that, why don't you tell me a little bit more about why storytelling became so important to you?
You know, storytelling was something that was you know, God kind of has these things that he designs in your heart that you never have any clue what he's going to kind of fulfill it with. And so I had no desire to be any kind of public figure or any kind of like, I'm very much an introvert by nature, but my brother and I grew up on a TV set. My dad was a news anchor, started in Dallas and then transferred over into Birmingham, Alabama. And so we were studio rats. So like sets like this, you know, I'm much more comfortable on that side of the camera. And that was always where we kind of were around. And I have a brother that has a lot of ambition. And and so we started doing like these little stories as kids. We had like a little VHS camera and we'd, you know,
same.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like the most romantic part of like, you look back to the purest moment in our careers. And it usually was with our friends with a little VHS camera, just reenacting little things.
Yep.
And so we fell in love with it. And so it was a hobby that grew out of control. And then that led to doing music videos and like some of the ones that you read, like the ones we did for Skillet. We just got really good at blowing things up. If we couldn't figure out how to end a rock music video, we would literally just say, we're going to blow something up. And so
that's so fun.
In fact, the last music video we wrote for Skillet was for the song Hero. And the treatment just read, the band comes out, things blow up, it starts to rain, more things blow up, it stops raining, everything blows up, the end. And they're like, we love it. And that's got 500 million views on YouTube. So we did that for years. And then we were looking at like, God, what do you have for us next? And it's always that scary transition. And you've done it several times because you've gone from being an actor to being a producer to podcast. And each time you do, you have to kind of pay your dues all over again.
Yeah.
So we were scared about stepping into features, but 15 years ago, Alex and Stephen Kendrick, they have their movie, The Forge, that's coming out soon. And Stephen and Alex Kendrick, we were on one of their sets and they were like, when are you guys going to start telling your stories? And we're like, we don't know how to do what you do. And they said, don't try to be us, find your voice. And so we stepped out in faith and did this micro budget film, October Baby. And all of a sudden it became, we were filmmakers and leading to our breakout being I Can Only Imagine.
It's incredible.
So,
well, I'm so glad that you guys do what you do because
thank you.
I have just been a huge fan of the films that, whether you direct them or produce them, the quality is so incredible. And this is because they're films of faith that have a faith story. I always kind of have griped over the years that Christian films can be so cheesy.
Yeah.
And then people like the Kendricks brothers, and then you guys came along. And they're such beautifully crafted movies.
Well, thank you.
Beautiful storytelling. They're riveting. And there's no expense spared. So I'm watching these movies in the theater, and this is what Christian excellence should always look like.
That means a lot. I mean, I think, you know, for me and you, we all kind of came up together. You in front of the camera and you've moved behind the camera. And, but you know, we've all been a part of, you know, trying to figure out how do we lift this up to show what we believe with excellence. And for us, I mean, I think we've all been part of the cheese too. Like there's things that I've done that have been cheesy that we're trying to find our voice.
Yep. Me too.
But I think as Christians, you know, there's this cool moment in time that's happening like right in the past 5 years to where it's competing and the product has gotten competitive. We found our voice, what we wanted to say. The industry is giving us some budgets that allow us to go out and hire actors that are really great. And then we're finding this emerging voices like what you and I got to do on Unsung Hero, seeing Joel Smallbone, you know, go from being a singer to being a filmmaker and telling a story that was very worthy. I'm excited to just see as a collective, we're all winning together.
Yeah.
So
me too.
Which really goes back to, you know, for us, like this stories that resonate with us on a soul level and, you know, and the ones that kind of got us in the game. And so there's things that have done that to me but Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz for me. So there's probably a few reasons. I don't even remember the first time I saw it as a kid, but I feel like it was on repeat in our house. And I remember when we had our very square television that you had to go up and turn the knob to turn it on.
I love it.
We didn't have a remote yet. And we did have a VHS recorder. And so we had the Wizard of Oz that we taped off TV. So it had commercial breaks and everything. And we had this so I could watch it all the time. One time when it was airing on TV, as a kid, I had done a commercial for Kentucky Fried Chicken. And in the middle of watching The Wizard of Oz, my commercial came on. And I was probably 5 years old. And so just that association and connection, I was like, we were screaming when my commercial had come on. The whole family had seen it. But really, I love The Wizard of Oz for so many reasons. I loved... One, the music is so beautiful, and Judy Garland's voice is just, so it just takes you away. But I remember seeing this movie and it's starting out in black and white, and there was something very special about that. Because guys, if you're really young listening to this, no, I did not grow up in black and white television, okay? It was actually already color when I was a kid.
But contrary, like every gray hair in my beard says a different story, but I'm not that old, so yeah.
So even it's starting out kind of in that sepia almost, it's like so black artistic. And white or sepia. And then, but it was such this chase of good and evil. I mean, the good witch, the wicked witch. And all Dorothy wanted to find was home. And then she meets these three characters along the way, the lion and the scarecrow and the Tin Man. And then there's these little munchkins in there that are so cute and having the happy dance. And there's the wizard and then all the evil monkey. I mean, it was so filled with things that as I looked as a child really stirred my imagination, but it was such an adventure at the same time. And I wanted to see every step, like, where was she going to go? Who was she going to meet? What lesson was she going to learn? Was she ever going to get back home? And of course, her ruby red slippers. I mean, I think that's probably what made me fall in love with shoes. Because if you go into my closet today,
love language is shoes. Mine's hats, yours shoes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Talk about love language. I'm a shoe girl. That's it. And it probably started with the ruby red slippers.
Please tell me you had a pair.
I certainly have over the years, many of them. And when I see any kind of sparkly shoe, but a red shoe, it's pretty fantastic. And I put them on and I click my heels 3 times.
I love that. There was something so fantastic. And that inner yearning, and we're going to get to the themes in a minute, but just as far as just the magical element, I mix all my movies on the Sony lot out in LA. And I, whenever we're there, there's a giant 5-story rainbow outside. And I kind of took it for granted what it was thematically about. But one day when I was going onto the stage, on the stage 6, I saw a little yellow brick right out front. And I asked somebody what's that about? And they said, this is the stage where they filmed Wizard of Oz. And then I dug into a little of the history of that. And I was like, where did they find that out? And there's something romantic about like old movies that people forget their history, and then all of a sudden it kind of gets covered over, and then somebody discovers it, like an archaeologist. And the person that found it was Michael Landon on the set of Little House on the Prairie. And they were doing the pilot episode, and the floor had been covered over several times, and they're ripping up the floor to build one of the kind of cabin interiors. Because on a movie, you film all the exteriors out on location, but the interiors a lot of the time are on a soundstage.
Right.
And so he's ripping up the floor personally, because that was his, project he was working on. When he pulled it up, he saw a pattern of yellow bricks. And all of a sudden they're like, nobody knew that this was the stage where they filmed Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
So there was something magic about that. And then I find out, like, you had a history on that stage too, right?
We did. So we shot the pilot of Full House on stage 6 on the Sony lot. And I remember when we went on that stage that I was told that's where the Wizard of Oz was filmed. And I mean, I just about passed out. And then they said, there's the yellow brick road is under this flooring. It's here.
That's incredible.
And I was 9 years old when we shot the pilot. And I just didn't know if it was real or not. Like to this day, I was kind of like, were they just telling me that because I was 9 and they thought it was really cool? Like maybe it was shot here, but is there really the yellow brick road under here? Because if it is, I want to pull it all up. I want to skip along that yellow brick road myself. But yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting that I got to work on work in a piece of history, and one that is actually one of my favorites of all time.
Like, I was just in the dressing room, and there's actually like an Entertainment Weekly cover of you like dressed up as Dorothy, and like I was just like, the connection to the characters. I think for me, thematically, there's something about movies that last. Usually, it's because it taps into a universal theme that people just automatically connect to, and it tends to be something that's a lot more profound than as Christians, we can kind of see the reflections of the gospel in. So, Wizard of Oz, what makes that tick at its core is the idea of identity. And I think a lot of people have pulled that identity theme in different directions, but as Christians, I mean, just that idea of like, who am I at my core? And each person on the journey goes on this kind of winding path to find out who they are and who they're destined to be. And there's this inner yearning. And so, you got like the Scarecrow, he wants to find his intelligence. He wants to find his brain. You've got the Tin Man that wants to find his heart. He wants to feel again. You've got the Cowardly Lion that wants to find his courage. And then you've got Dorothy that ultimately wants to find out where home is. And they go on this winding path to find it. And I think a lot of is them finding out what their true identity was, because, the Tin Man's always crying. He already has emotion. He says doesn't know it. So it's like, for me, there's each of those characters. Usually there's an entry point for a person. I've got my own, but I've been curious, like, whose character did you gravitate towards their journey, and what did it speak to you on a thematic level?
Well, I think maybe because she's kind of the only girl in the movie, probably Dorothy. But there's something about finding your home and your connection and your people. And that's always been important on a thematic level. And what really grabs me in that is that, at the end, when Glinda says to her, like, you've always had it. It's always been there. It's always been inside of you. You've always, you could have always gone home at any moment. And I just, I'm going to say one thing and then I'm going to kind of talk around it, because to me, it's a little bit about belief in oneself. However, from a theological point of view, God would not tell us to believe in ourselves, but that all of our strength and everything can be found within him, that he will give those things to us. But we still have free will. Right. And Dorothy had that. She had free will, that she could choose to do that at any time. And God basically is saying, I'm making up the theology within this movie, but how I see it within her character was that God was saying, I give you free will, and it's always been within inside of you, but you have the choice and the power to choose it. Yeah. And what do you want to do with what I've given you? And so she desperately wanted her family and her home and to be around the people that she loved. And, my family's incredibly important to me. And what do I do with them? And how do I value them? And how do I nurture those relationships? And would that tear me apart if I never saw them again? And which makes you think, like, I want to be satisfied in the place that I'm in right now. I want to recognize the presence of here and now, and you, that I'm sitting with you in this room, and be appreciative of the moment. So in those kinds of ways, I very much related to Dorothy. But I will say, I can also very much relate to the Cowardly Lion. Oh, because I think also as a fourth child, I'm the youngest, I'm the baby, that I always have like this little fight, this little, I see that in my youngest. And I feel like, that's very much from the Lion, that it's like, you have to find your courage. And especially when you're the little runt of the litter. I've just had this fightful spirit within me, but it's not because I feel powerful all the time. I often feel scared about things and I don't feel very courageous and I'm nervous about it. And yet there's something within me that I feel like God's given me that pushes me through the fear.
Yeah.
So I have a great connection to the Cowardly Lion also.
I love that. I can see that in you. Because like I've always been, and we talked a little bit about it on the episode you were on my show, just how you've dealt with moments of criticism and weathered the storm and consistently just, handled it with dignity. And like, there was just such courage. But like, a lot of times people can equate that with it, that you don't feel the hurt and the pain,
right?
But you feel every bit of it. Like, I think in order to be present, you have to have your nerves kind of wide open. You have to feel those things. And I think that courage, and what the Cowardly Lion showed, was courage wasn't about him not feeling afraid. He was terrified. It was about having enough passion and desire to push through the fear.
Exactly.
And that's where the courage came from. I see that in my,
who do you relate to?
So your journey, like my little girl, my youngest Penny, I see that in her. She's the fighter of the family, but she's also the one that feels the most fear. But like for her, like the other day we were walking through the parking lot and she's been very afraid of cars coming by the parking lot. She has kind of an OCD fear of it. And then we were going to walk into the store and she was like, Dad, I got it. I want to do this on my own. And so she held her own hand instead of mine and walked across that parking lot courageously. Yeah. And I was like, that's the Cowardly Lion.
Totally.
For me, it was always the Tin Man, because I think there's something as men that we feel a lot of times that in order to be strong, we kind of have to be stoic and we have to just shut it off. And, but I think we were meant to feel. There's a desire to feel.
Yeah.
And, later in life, as you begin to kind of grow in your faith as a guy, I think there's a necessity to kind of get in touch with yourself on an emotional level to be able to be vulnerable and present, especially as a dad, and trying to figure out how do you impart things that are more than just rules, and the way you've got to do it on a heart level. And so there's a guy named Jeff Schulte that is in Nashville that has a ministry called Tin Man Ministries. And so Tin Man,
what a great name.
It's incredible.
I love it.
It's so good. So like he's literally got a painting of Wizard of Oz on his wall, and he's got all the guys that he's mentored over the years have given him like old antique oil cans. So his entire shelf is covered in these old oil cans that each one represents a guy that he's impacted. And so I'm one of those guys.
Wow.
And, he became a mentor to me of like, it's about giving men their hearts back. And how do I get back in touch with who I am and be vulnerable to where there's not two versions of me. Like there's one version that I'm fully known. And there's this power that comes out of, being a vulnerable man. And I think the Tin Man and him being the strongest, I mean, he's made of steel, but also like his power that he found was that he deeply cared. And that there's something really, really beautiful about that. Yeah. So yeah, that one's mine. I think the other thing about Wizard of Oz is the idea of finding your voice. You talked a little bit about the song. I mean, the most iconic song of movie history, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Little Judy Garland, 14, 15 years old, singing that song with just such power.
Yeah.
And that song was actually cut out of the movie twice. They were going to,
was it really?
They weren't even going to use it. Like they're like the executives never think, movie executives never think forward. They always think backwards, but they're like, that's Somewhere Over the Rainbow. It's too long. Let's just get on to Oz. And they're like, no, this is the movie. They're like, we don't need it. So they cut it out twice and put it back in.
Wow. So I did not know that.
The different movie that would have been, but like over the years, a lot of people, wanted to adapt, the book. I think Walt Disney tried to do it for a while. And then finally the right team assembled. Judy Garland was the person destined to play Dorothy. I don't think there's anybody in the history of film that could have played it better than her. And all of a sudden the movie kind of finds its footing, and the right team was there to make it. And one of the stories I was reading now is cool. I was reading one of the kind of, you talk about destiny kind of things, just things that are meant to be. So Frank Morgan that plays the professor in The Wizard of Oz. So when he's in real life Kansas, there was a story, and I think it's true. And it could be legend, but like it's on Wikipedia. So we're gonna accept that it's true. But Frank Morgan, when he was in wardrobe, goes and puts on his coat, as the professor, and he went and reached in his pocket, and the wardrobe was bought from like a thrift shop or like a secondhand store. Mm-hmm. He goes and finds something in his pocket, pulls it out, and it's a receipt from a thrift store. And on it, it's signed. So L.F. Baum, the writer for the book, it was his jacket.
Get out!
His widow had donated all his clothes to the thrift shop after he passed away, and somehow it just felt like it had the DNA of Wizard of Oz, and ends up being the wardrobe for the movie.
Wow!
So it's just like that idea of destiny.
Yeah, that is really cool.
So we've got our own moments for us where it's like we found our story to tell. Mm-hmm. For you. You grew up as, an actress, mm-hmm. but then there came a point where you're like, I have something to say. Mm-hmm. Like for you, where was it where you found your voice and you were able to start saying like, these are my stories to tell. These are my things I want to say, and had the courage to do that?
I think the first time where I kind of recognized I could have a voice was after I took a 10-year break from the industry. So I had this childhood career when I did Full House and did all these commercials and guest spots on shows. I was an actor, and you do what you're told. And then I took that 10-year break, and I came back into the industry at 32. And I had very much grown in my faith because God just was preparing me over that 10-year period. I mean, I dug into time with him. So when I came back, I had done a couple of movies, but I had done a show called Make It or Break It. And it was on ABC Family. Mm-hmm. And I did an audition for it. They actually had, the executive producer had called me and wanted to have a conversation. And I was really interested, but then I said, they wanted to do some things that I said, well, I have some boundaries that won't cross.
Right.
And so is this possible? Because here's where I stand. And if that's not the route that you guys want to go and don't think that gives you enough room for the character, then I'll probably have to say no, because I don't want to be pushed into a place where I'm being asked to cross boundaries that I don't want to.
Good for you.
And she goes, oh my gosh, I love that. It was Holly Sorensen. She was the executive producer. And she said, I think this is great. Actually, I would love to make this character a Christian.
Wow.
And I wasn't asking for that.
Wow.
I just said I had some actor boundaries. But that was the first time that I shared my voice. I was willing to walk away from it if it didn't happen. And then was so pleasantly surprised that she was willing to say yes and modify that and work with me and actually embrace it. So it was like this welcoming of my voice. And props to her, because she made me feel so confident. And I realized at that moment, like I had the power to use my voice in the way that I would like to in the industry. And that kind of started it. So on that show. Man. And then it was little by little saying, hey, it's not about winning or losing. Like I can always ask for things. I might not get them, or creatively that might not be the direction that company or that producer or that writer wants to go. But it gave me the confidence to be able to talk about it and ask for it and go, okay, but if it doesn't work out, I always have the choice to walk away.
Man, that's so beautiful. That really speaks to me, because I think it is rooted in identity. And I think identity is like, in order to do things like you do and like what we're trying to do, your identity has to be something more than who's on camera and the job that you're doing. It has to be rooted in the fact that you had walked away from it for 10 years. And when you came back, you're like, I don't need this to be okay. You know, if I'm here on purpose, and I'm here for a reason, and I'm going to be who God says that I am. That security gives you a chance to be very grounded in what you want instead of chasing approval.
Right.
And
which is a hard thing.
It's so hard.
It's so hard, because trust me, I'm a people pleaser at my core.
Me too.
And yet God has grown me. I trust him in his ways so much more than what my human desires are. I truly trust him. And every year that I grow older and the more and more I read his word, I am so confident that he has what's best for me and that he will protect me at all costs. He will love me at all costs. Again, with the grace and mercy, I mean, it's like never ending, but I just know, because when I look at the bigger picture of who God is and who his character is, I just know he has what's best for me. So who am I to say, no, God, I think this would be better.
I know.
So I truly trust it implicitly, but it's been a journey to get there. And it still doesn't make every decision easy.
Nope. No, because
sometimes you're like, I want that one so bad, but I know I'm going to trust God on this. Or like, okay, God, I hear you speaking. I didn't want that answer, but like, all righty.
I mean, there's a beauty in the struggle, but that allows God to really kind of clearly direct. And like I was talking, we have a group of interns at Kingdom Story Company, our company, and there's like 6 interns, and we were having like a little bit of a roundtable discussion talking about our experience. And I had talked about that there was an actor that we were working with that had really criticized me and said some things about the way that I was trying to do things. And one of them asked, like, how do you deal with that criticism? And I was like, you cannot depend on people in this industry to validate who you are. If you're waiting for that, like if they say good things about you, you're like, you don't mean it. And if they say bad things about you, you're like, that's absolutely true. Right. And if you depend on them to validate you, it's never. So for us, it was on the movie I Can Only Imagine. And when we did that movie, that was a make or break moment in our career. And when we went out to do it, we had different people that said that movie will never work. One person said, we think there's only like, a few thousand people on the planet that would watch a movie like that. The day we started filming it, there was an article in the publication of Deadline that said the music biopic is dead. I'm like, we picked the winner, guys. And so we went into it, and the first day on set, I just had a bit of a mild panic attack. And I was like, God, I'm either making the best movie ever or the worst, and I don't know which one it is. And God was just like, is that okay? And I was like, no, it's not okay. I don't want to do something. Right. And he's like, are you okay with who I say you are, regardless of what people say? And I finally kind of just said, okay, I'm going to let go of the boat. God, it's your problem. I'm going to swim for shore. If we drown, we drown, but we're going to do our best. So when that movie opened the way it did and was this kind of phenomenal career making moment, rather than it validating me of like, hey, I'm this whatever filmmaker, storyteller. I remember sitting at a little food court in Dallas, Texas, Plano, Texas. The movie was playing next door. Mercy Me was doing a meet and greet. And I just sat at the food court, and people were walking by me, and nobody knew who I was. And I had tears in my eyes. And I was like, God, how cool that nobody knows who I am, but I get to be a front row seat to seeing you move. This is about you. And it was validating from a standpoint of purpose, not in terms of now I'm something special. Yeah. And I think when we see it from heaven's perspective, and I think kind of to wrap up, like the Wizard of Oz part of it all, we don't find our theology in movies. It's storytelling. It's not like, I don't look at it and say, well, the movie said this, so it must be truth. It just pokes at emotionally things that are yearnings of our heart. But when there's a yearning of our heart, it points us towards the only thing that can answer that is Christ, is God. And when we kind of use that as a launching pad, the way Jesus told his parables, Jesus would tell these parables that would communicate deep truths and yearnings, but then it would stir the heart of the hearer. And they go back to Jesus, like, what did this mean? And then he was able to point them to his truth. Yeah. And so that's really the point of storytelling. That's why we tell movies. That's why we're in the business that we are in. And I think you can find that reflection. So I'm excited over this season with you to just go through a few of these stories and to be able to go through and say, what reflections of the gospel or yearnings of the heart are there, and how are those launching pads for having discussions like this? Yeah.
Oh, it's exciting. I love this conversation. I love when we're able to mix faith and even a little theology with entertainment, right? Which feel like this juxtaposition. Well, everyone is just like entertainment, evil, horrible. And I'm like, no, there's actually amazing stuff in entertainment, whether it's in films and movies and television. there are incredible people within these industries too. And you are one of them. And we're out there and we're trying to put all these great things forward that you, the viewer, will love and reflect on, and it will pull on those heartstrings and then maybe even cause you to take a step of faith or in your faith, or to walk towards faith in some way. So this is a cool season. I love this. It's a little bit of pop culture and a little bit of faith. We always answer, Andy, a listener question on the podcast.
Love that about it.
We're going to answer some right here. This first one is from Elizabeth. Okay. She asks, I have a question about how to decide what shows, movies, media to watch that are God-honoring. I often struggle knowing what to watch that isn't going to mess with my walk with God. How do I navigate what to watch and consume for my family? How do you guys navigate that?
Man, that's a loaded question.
It is. And it's a great question and one that I get asked so often. So often. It's really difficult, especially it's one thing to answer it from on a personal level, but once you have kids, it's very difficult. Yeah. Especially now that, we used to could turn on certain platforms and just tell the kids that this is safe to watch. Yeah. And now there's so many, kind of subversive messaging to it that I don't really want indoctrinated. And so it's a little bit of it's not a little bit, it's a lot of a challenge now. Yeah, it is.
But I also think completely removing yourself from the equation, my kids are going to hear a lot of things in culture with or without me. Yeah. And there's really no way to kind of completely shut it off. And so for me, what we try to do is I'm big on I don't like gratuitous things that are there for, whether that's violence or, gratuitous language or sex and those type things that I feel like are going to tear me down, that are going to tear my family down. And so we try to stay away from those things. As far as subject matters, we try to use things that we watch as a launch pad for discussions. Yeah. So hey, let's engage and let's try to understand. And it's an imperfect science, but I'd rather them watch things with me and us having a discussion about it rather than them consume it away from me and me not have a voice. And so I'm like, we're going to watch this and we're going to talk about it. Yeah. And so we try to find that. And it's I think my desire a lot of times is I want black and white. I just want to right or wrong. Yeah. And there's so much gray in there that it takes discernment. So we pray about it a lot, and we are, try to just not be mindlessly numbing out and consuming media, but consuming it on purpose and really using that as a discussion. But I'm very curious as to what your answer is.
So very much like you, I would say my answer is similar to yours within my family. I would much rather watch things together and discuss it. I mean, that's my favorite part about watching movies. Okay, let's dig in and let's talk about it. What did we love? What did we not? What was in there that really grabbed you? If I can pull it into a theological conversation, I will. It's just who I am. Yeah. So I love that. But I know that a lot of Christians will have hard rules hey, I will not consume anything that's rated R. Sure. My son actually has that. Wow, he is the barometer when he is at our house and we're looking for a family movie night. And remember, my kids are all adults now, but still we know that if Lev is there, we can only watch PG-13 or under.
That's impressive, actually. You did something right.
However,
it's Disney night again.
Lev's really the only Christian one. We're all heathens in our house because we'll all watch the rated R stuff. But the difference for me is that sometimes, and I'll take a very easy example would be The Passion of the Christ, which was rated R. Yeah. So I'm going to discern if that's a rated R movie. For what reasons is it rated R? Because I don't like gratuitous movies either. If it's just about sex and violence and language, those things upset me. Yeah. However, I think there's some movies that are still beneficial to watch and discuss that could have that type of adult content in it. If there are a handful of curse words, I might not like them. But if it is in real life, because this is what this person was doing, or it made some sort of impact or emphasis on the story that tells me as the viewer what type of person this is, it conveys that message, then I still want to watch the movie if there's a greater message of redemption within it.
I totally agree.
So that's one thing that I look at discerning. I'm also very spirit aware when I watch. I talked about this actually in my season with Bianca Olthoff. I believe I was watching a television show and I really liked it. And it had all these elements that I connected to. But when I went into watching the second season, I realized that break from season 1 to season 2, because it was a couple months off, that my own character started changing.
Wow.
I had bad habits that started to resurface. And I had realized when the second season of that show started and I watched it for the first time, that first episode, all of the old habits and they were eating disorder habits, but they were very triggered from watching the show. But I didn't recognize it until I had this break from it. And then when I went to re-engage in that content, I went, oh my goodness, this is where I've been triggered. And I realized at that moment, this is not healthy consumption for me on an entertainment aspect, because it's actually affecting my decision-making and who I am. So I had to stop watching that show. So that's one thing I try to watch with this discernment, but also listen to the spirit, that if something's giving me a red flag, and maybe for you that might be, hey, there's just too much sex in this. People go like, I love Bridgerton. I want to watch this. I love the dresses. I love the way they talk. I love the costumes and the flower and the music. All those things are amazing. But there's a point where I'm like, if I start feeling uncomfortable in this, and this, I feel like, what am I giving up? Then that's a red flag. And you should go, I probably shouldn't watch this. That's
beautiful. I do think that it was Elizabeth, for Elizabeth's question. I think, really listening to your conscience in that, that it's okay. Like, it might be slightly different for each person, but don't violate your conscience. And if something, I talk to my kids with music as well, of just like subconsciously, it's just a, catchy tune. But if we're listening to this, what is it talking about? And that's getting into you on a soul level. Does it change your behavior? And just having that be part of that discussion. And for each person, that's going to be a little bit different, but the Spirit's going to kind of really lead you as to what's violating your conscience, what's pulling you down, and what seeps in. And there's certain things, like you said, that as a man, I can't watch because it does pull me down, and I can't. And so, and for my kids too, and for my son. So we talk about that, just like, I'm sorry, but we can't go watch this because of this. And so that's part
my kids kind of make fun of me, because especially when it comes to demonic movies or horror movies, which all of us hate them. We really do. But, and I feel like it's an easier example to use with a horror film or a demonic film, is that I always say, you're opening a portal, man. You're allowing evil into the house. Well, then I'll go so far as to say that other things open up portals. That's when they make fun of me. They're like, Mom, did a portal just get open? And I'm like, yeah, man,
it's
it just did.
Portal.
It did. So those are things we think about with the music, with television. But I will say there are wonderful resources where you can get reviews. There's the Movie Guide Awards that is always listing.
Ed Bear's thing is great.
Listing movies that are positive and uplifting, and whether they're for adults or for children. And I think that family-friendly content, to me, family-friendly means that every member of the family can be comfortable and conscious watching it. However, I think there is still family programming that is for mom and dad. I believe there's family programming for the whole family, meaning 2-year-olds and up. But sometimes, as an adult, I want to watch things that are edifying to me, but they still might not be appropriate for my child. That to me does not mean that they aren't family friendly. So there's resources you can look to like that. Also, Great American Family Channel, the network that I'm on. I mean, pretty safe to say that your entire family can watch everything on Great American Family. I love that.
There's the producer in you, because I do think with what you're doing with GAC and, what we're trying to do at Kingdom and what we're doing at Lionsgate, it's a moment in time where the audience, their voice has never been more clearly heard. And so you vote for what you want by what you consume. And so supporting, watching GSE and things like that, or films like what we just had with Unsung Hero. Every time you vote with your ticket or what you turn your TV to, ultimately allows there to be more of that made. So if you don't like it, change it by what you watch.
Yeah. And I would also, even if you're not a film buff, take note of the companies that are producing these movies. So you know that a Kingdom story is going to be pretty great for your family. You know that, something like the Kendricks brothers or even Angel Studios. You still have to discern what you're watching. Yep. Okay. We all have to watch out and just do a couple of seconds of research, but there are some trusted companies and trusted channels out there that can be your go-tos.
Totally.
Okay. Thanks for that. Okay. Oh, we have a practical question. This one is from Brenda. And she said, hey, the Unwind Guide mentioned in the podcast with Jenny Allen, I can't find. How do I find it? Okay. Well, thanks for that. When you go to Candace.com, you will notice that a pop-up comes up. And you can click on that and that will take you to the most relevant guide for the season that we're in. However, if the pop-up doesn't come up or you've just missed it, just go back to the homepage and all of the guides are listed in different colors. So you can just click on it at the homepage. It's as easy as that. Okay, this was awesome, Andy.
Great. Fantastic.
I can't wait till next week. This is going to be so much fun. We're going to talk about another movie and come back and join us. And I wanted to let you know that Andy and I have a family entertainment guide for you. If you find yourself just kind of watching movies or shows mindlessly, there are some questions and ideas to help you go a little deeper. So you can go to Candace.com to find the link, and it's all in our show notes. Until next time, be grateful all day, every day. CandyRock Entertainment, all rights reserved.